Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Rayceen Productions MC and producer, and joining me today is Ed Lazere, candidate for DC Council at Large. How are you?
I'm good, Krylios. How are you doing today?
I am doing so well, and thanks for joining me today.
Of course. I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Now tell me, how are you doing now with this pandemic going on personally?
I'm managing okay. I am home and able to, work from home. My wife is here with me, and we just hang out in different part of the houses during the day, and then go for a walk together in the afternoon to maintain our sanity. We have two adult sons who are living in the area, and so we get to see them at least by Zoom, and we know that they're well as well. And so we are managing okay and feel blessed that we are healthy and secure. And of course, just, feel really deeply for those who are worried about whether it's their job or their health, particularly those who have to leave the house for their jobs right now.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So, let our audience know a little bit about your background and why you're running for the at-large seat this year.
Sure. Well, I of course appreciate the opportunity to be here on the Rayceen Show, and I just love everything about DC, including the Rayceen Show. I ran for council in 2018, and one of the more fun experiences was being on the show then. I've been in DC my entire adult life,
Mm.
and it was a little more, which is about 35 years, and it was a little more than 20 years ago when I was a father to some young sons. I just decided that I wanted to devote my career to making DC a fairer and better city.
Mm.
And I found the opportunity to do that by leading an organization for 2 decades called the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, which might have a boring name, but really has an amazing mission. Uh, yeah, so at DCFPI, our recipe was relatively simple. We wanted to bring attention to the city's most glaring challenges and inequities, like the fact that in the 10 years prior to this pandemic, as the city was booming and so-called prospering, incomes were growing for white residents, but not for Black residents. And to me,
Mm.
that is a sign of a broken economy that's not working well, certainly not working well for everyone. So we would take that information, put it in front of policymakers, kind of information we felt that they should feel compelled to do something about. And then we partnered with other organizations, community organizations and advocates, particularly through the city's budget, which I really worked to master,
Mhm.
to increase investments in education, to increase investments in affordable housing, to do things like pass paid family leave, and requiring employers to provide paid sick leave. And I'm really proud that I was able to do a lot of things at the Fiscal Policy Institute to make DC a more equitable community,
Mhm.
um, like expanding affordable housing. Uh, I chaired an education commission where we were able to recommend and ultimately implement a policy to steer more revenues, more money, resources to high poverty schools, the things that we know will make a difference in those children's lives. So I'm really proud that I was able to contribute to my adopted hometown. And you might say, like, well, why run for office when you had such a killer job?
Yeah.
And it's because I want to do more. It's really frustrating to see how the city has changed in the last 10 years and our leaders not rising to the challenge.
Yeah.
So, for example, I used to work in Noma, and every day I would walk by people whose only home was a tent, and it broke my heart, because then I will walk into my office, sit down at my computer, and pull up spreadsheets that showed the city has a lot of money and could be doing better. And I just, it
Mm.
angered me and frustrated me that we weren't doing more. I think it's wrong that this development has led to more displacement of Black people here than in any other city in the country. Like, we can be doing better. And I think we need bold leaders to be doing better, particularly now in a pandemic where we had 10 years of prosperity that didn't help Black and brown residents. And now we have a pandemic that is slamming them, their health, their lives, and their jobs. And I'm eager to rise to this challenge. I love DC, and I want to use those skills that I've built up over 2 decades to tackle this pandemic, to make sure that everybody is okay, that nobody loses their home, that people are able to get their jobs back, and that we come out of this as strong and healthy as possible. That's why I'm running.
Definitely. Thank you so much too. And speaking of the pandemic, how has your campaign adapted to, what's going on and the changes that may come with that?
Yeah, well, certainly that what we focused on has been a lot of what do we do to address the pandemic. So early on, for example, I was encouraging the mayor to remove people from our homeless shelters where they live so close together
Yes.
and are such at risk, encouraging the city to use our empty hotels to help separate and create the social distancing that people experiencing homelessness otherwise could not do. I also have been pushing that the city needs to do more to help our immigrants, because as you may know, as your listeners may know, federal government said we don't care in all of their relief packages. They said we do not care about immigrants if you're not documented, even though they're our neighbors. They do some of the hardest jobs in our community. They add to our cultural vitality. So I've also advocated that the city, if the federal government's not going to do it, DC has a responsibility. If we truly love our neighbors and call ourselves a sanctuary city, we should be investing in those neighbors. And unfortunately, the council had passed on that opportunity. They had legislation before them, and at the last minute they pulled it. So as a council member, it's terrible. Yeah, I mean, it's more than unfortunate. It's shameful because literally, you know, so many people are worried about paying their rent, but at least they might be getting unemployment from the federal government. Undocumented immigrants are getting nothing, literally nothing. And so I have no idea how those families are feeding themselves and paying their rent. So it's changed my campaign in that way. In addition to, of course, not being in person for things like this show and doing everything. We're all Zooming these days, including my mom. Like everyone's Zooming all the time.
Yes. And you know, we've kind of all had to adapt to this and get into the Zoom, learn about the video chat, you know, all of that. So it's a really big change for us. You know, it's a really big change. And I see you've touched on quite a few of them, but what are your top 3 issues you would say that you're trying to tackle if you become elected?
Sure. So, I mean, the 3 things that I have been working on for the last 2 decades and that I would prioritize at the DC Council as a at-large member. First is ending homelessness and addressing our affordable housing crisis. We have the tools. We know the programs that work. We just aren't putting enough energy and enough resources into them. So as a council member, I would do sort of what I did as an advocate, which is to say, don't you think it's reasonable that we set a timetable, maybe 4 years to end homelessness and 10 years to address our affordable housing needs, and figure out what those yearly metrics are to get there. And then once you've got that in place, then we can hold ourselves accountable. Then I can say to the mayor and our fellow council members, hey, you know, we only added 500 units of affordable housing. We shouldn't be clapping for that when we said we needed 10,000, right? So that's my goal, is to put on paper a plan for what it actually will take so that we can then hold each other accountable to actually implementing it. Because we should be able to end homelessness. Other communities have, and we should be able to as well. And the key to that, of course, is more affordable housing. And we just shouldn't let gentrification roll over the city the way it has. We can do better. So the second is education, starting when kids aren't even born, with pregnant moms and infants and toddlers, all the way up through high school and post high school. We all know, if you have a child or even a nephew or a niece, like watching an infant develop, you know that is a special moment of time where development is so rapid, and the right investments can make a huge difference in a child's life, not just then, but forever. So I want to really invest in high quality early childhood education and supports for young families. And then once they get to school, I want to make sure their schools all across the city have the resources that they need for technology, for qualified teachers. But I especially want to make sure that our high poverty schools have enough mental health professionals. They have added resources for after school programs that kids can't afford without support, that they have small enough class sizes and tutoring, the kind of things that we know make a difference. As I said earlier, I chaired a commission that said we should be putting more money into high poverty schools, and the commission recommended that, and the council half implemented it, but we didn't get all the way there. And if we're really going to say we want to close the opportunity gap in our schools, every principal that I've talked to in Ward 7 and Ward 8 says it starts with more resources for the kind of things that I've talked about. So I want to make sure that happens. And then third is I've had a huge focus on quality jobs, because we can't build enough affordable housing if people don't have a job to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to get $15 an hour soon, but you and I know that's $30,000 a year. Do you think that's enough to live on in DC?
Definitely not.
No, absolutely not. Right. So we need to do better. So we even need to think about whether that minimum wage should go higher, whether we want contractors who work with DC government to make sure they're paying their workers a fair wage, to make sure that any developer getting money from the city, which happens a lot, make sure that they pay their workers a living wage. Because right now, we're giving out subsidy deals like at the wharf without requiring good jobs at the in construction or good jobs after construction, and that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I want to do that, and then I want to just keep strong the programs that are about to go in place, like paid family leave, and really enforce the laws around job discrimination to make sure that whether you're transgender or other or queer or a pregnant woman or an immigrant, that we're not going to allow your employer to discriminate against you, to fire you, or not pay you fully what they're supposed to do.
Oh, wow. And that's lovely. That's really, really, really lovely, because I know so many people in those situations where that's their story, you know. So that's something that I know a lot of people would be really, really thankful about. So how can our audience, you know, support your campaign, get involved, get engaged, follow up with you? How can they do that?
Yeah, well, I'll first just let you know how to find us, find the campaign, and then how to support. So the campaign website is easy. It's ed4dc.com. So edfordc.com. And you can go there to request a yard sign. You can go there to volunteer, meaning you might be able to knock on doors if we're able to do that, or make phone calls, or even send postcards or emails to your friends telling them to support me. Of course, you can donate. Candidates do need money to run a strong campaign. None of it goes to me. There's no salary here. It's all paying for yard signs and for the staff that helps us run a professional campaign, and the materials that we need, like for handing out cards at an event, things like that. And I'm using public financing. I agreed that I will not take any corporate or large dollar donations. I will not take any donations above $100. And in return, the public financing in DC will provide matching funds of 5 to 1. So really a great opportunity for people to run a people-powered campaign rather than a corporate-powered campaign.
Definitely. And you know, we know the general election is in November, and so that's a bit of a ways from here. But as we've seen in 2020, the months are just going by quickly.
Yeah.
So, and we don't even know what things will look like by November. But could you just tell the audience how they can go ahead and vote if things don't change by November?
Sure. I mean, as it gets closer to the actual election date, we'll probably have some more information, but you do have to make sure you register to vote, and anybody can vote in the general election. It doesn't, independent, Democrat, statehood green, whatever. And registering at the Board of Elections website is really easy to do, or they even have an app for your phone, Vote for number 4 DC. So that's the best place to go to register. You can do that very close to the election, but at least do that a month before, so by the beginning of October. And then if it's likely to be the case that we won't want everybody going to the polls, it's likely that we'll do the same thing that happened in the primary, which is mail ballots. But you won't get one mailed to you automatically. You have to request it. And again, once you're registered as a voter and you have your right address, you have to tell the Board of Elections on their website or the phone app to please send me a ballot, and then make sure you mail it in by Election Day.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Ed. It was great chatting with you.
It was fun chatting with you too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for watching.